Everybody, thanks so much for listening to Fire Breathing Rob. If you're listening to us on any of our platforms, please subscribe, like, share, and definitely hit the bell to make sure that you get new updates. This is on every platform, YouTube, podcasts. Obviously, you can't do it on the radio, but tell your friends regardless. So again, we are doing a real fun topic, I think. It's something that's near and dear to my heart as a person that really grew up growing things and still does that in the state of Florida. And the woman that we're going to have on to talk about these things has a lot of information on this, and I'm excited to have her on. This is Marjory Wildcraft. She is the founder of the Grow Network, and definitely check that out again. And she also has a book out, and it's The Growing System, the essential guide to modern self-sufficient living, from growing food to making medicine, which was intriguing to me. And I definitely want to talk about the medicine. And she also has DVDs out too, Growing Your Own Groceries. So she's got a lot of information out there. I think it's very valuable for people that are in our generation to read and listen to people like Marjory, because this is how we're going to live in a sustainable society. I mean, we see this throughout global warming, climate change, whatever the heck you want to call it. It's really gotten extreme, especially during the past 2 years, but even before that. So sorry to rattle on, Marjory, but you've done so much, and there's so much to talk about on this topic. I'm so excited to have you on, and thanks so much for doing this with us today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. I mean, this has been my passion for like 20 years, teaching people how to grow food in their own backyard. You should have been doing it 20 years ago, but the best time to do it, if you didn't, is right now. So let's get started.
Right, so let's kick this around. So you did say you've been doing this for 20 years. Can you talk about what made you want to live that sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. In the beginning, I had no desire to grow food. I mean, I was a very, very successful real estate investor. I was structuring these real high yield partnerships. We were buying houses. We were in the Austin, Texas market. I was a student of Robert Kiyosaki long before he was famous for Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And in fact, if you dig up those old Time Life video infomercials, I was his lead testimonial. I mean, I had a very successful real estate business. I was volunteering on a project, and it absolutely, I had no idea that it would completely change my life. Everything I had done would be destroyed, and my life would be changed. It was so innocent. I was volunteering on a project to get locally grown food into a local elementary school. We're going to get, organic vegetables in and for lunch, right? And oh my God, this project was going to be a success. We thought we'd have no problem, because teachers and parents know that if you eat high quality, the students that eat high quality food, they score higher on tests, they're better behaved, they're calmer, they're much more pleasant. They score higher on their SAT tests and all that sort of stuff. Parents wanted it. There's federal money, state money, grant money everywhere. And we thought this was going to be a slam dunk. And it wasn't until the third meeting that the whole thing completely fell apart and my life changed. And we were in the community center. You know what I'm talking about, that echoey old building with the ratty folding chairs and the ceiling fan that wobbles. But we didn't care, because, we were like, this was going to happen. And it came, we're going through the agenda, and it came time to put pen to paper on who would be the farmers. And we realized there weren't any farmers. And this is Central Texas, which has some big counties, and there weren't any farmers in the county to provide vegetables. And all of a sudden, the drive from Austin to my little community in Red Rock, which was about an hour, made sense. There's no tanned men on tractors out in the fields. There's no big silos of grain. There's no crops. It's all just, forests or new subdivision or a Dollar General or a grocery, a convenience store with a petrol, right? And there's no food growing out. And I realized everybody in the room there knew there's only 4 days worth of food in the grocery stores now. And I think now, after the COVID experience we've all had, everybody realizes how quickly those shelves can become empty. And that things can disappear and be gone for months. Like we all experienced it with toilet paper, which is kind of a joke, but that same experience can happen with every bit of food in that food supply. And I could not stop shaking. I mean, I just could not stop shaking. And I was responsible for closing the bill. I don't even know how I got the key and close the door and put the chair and turn the light. And for months afterwards, years afterwards, I had panic attacks. I couldn't sleep. My health deteriorated. I lost friends and relationships because, I'm in Texas. I'm right next to Austin, which has a population of 1 million. That's 3 million meals a day people want to eat. Houston, 4 million. San Antonio, 4 million. Dallas, Fort Worth, 3 million. All of that food comes in 1,200 miles, shipped in a just-in-time trucking system that has a huge amount of vulnerabilities. And it changed my life. And I mean, I just went from, I said, whatever I had been doing before was irrelevant, because I could see that at some point in time, there was going to be a major crisis where people were going to need to grow their own food. And I thought, God, you have picked the wrong person, because I don't know the first dang thing about this, like what? But I took every class you could take in permaculture and everything, running around with barefoot crazies in the national forest because they aren't starving, figuring out how do you grow food, and gratefully this event, in 2008 happened. I was like, oh my God, this is it. Unfortunately, we kicked the can down the road. But in all these years, I've learned how to take somebody who knows absolutely nothing to having them produce at least half of their own food in a backyard size space. I mean, like the size of maybe 3 parking spots in a very short period of time. So we've really been able to dial in what's the fastest way to get people growing food, what is the most calorically dense, what's the most nutritional, how do we help people through really difficult time, and how do we help people be able to produce their own food in their backyard? So not the happiest story, but I will tell you, through this journey, I have healed on 3 levels. And the base level is by eating my own homegrown food. It took me a while, and then all of a sudden I was like, I don't have severe allergies anymore. I can tolerate heat and cold with no problem. I mean, and I hardly ever get sick. My health has reached a huge new high. The other is emotionally, like right now, we're in the midst of chaos. We have unbelievable levels of mental illness, but I'm very calm because I know my own basic needs. I can take care of them. And then the third level is spiritual, because when you're growing your own food, you're using your hands in the earth and you're working directly with forces of creation, and it is magical. So I know people might be freaked out and scared and whatever, but I know that the end point, it's such a simple and humble act of growing your own food, is incredibly healing, and it's an amazing journey. So that's how I got started.
So, I mean, that was a heck of a story, Marjory. And again, for people that are listening, and please subscribe, like, and share this interview, and definitely hit the bell. This is Marjory Wildcraft. Again, she is the founder of the Grow Network and also wrote the book, The Growing System, The Essential Guide to Modern Self-Sufficient Living, from growing food to making medicine. She also does have that DVD series too, Grow Your Own Groceries. So as we keep going into the interview, Marjory, can you talk about what made you start the Growing Network?
Yeah, well, as I said, I panicked and I was freaking out, and I was figuring out how to grow my own food. And one of the first things you realize when you start growing food is that there's this myth of the lone survivor, and you're never going to do it all on your own, and you need community. And so I started developing, and when I started really learning a few things, I started teaching workshops. And then the workshops just started selling out, like somebody called me up and said, I got 30 people. Can I be over on Saturday? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I really wanted people to be there in person, to see it, to experience it. And they said, you have got to make a video out of this. And so I took a year off. It took a year to script that thing and video processing wasn't as slick back then as it is now. We created the video, created the website, and everybody just kept saying, we need more, we need more. Can you teach us this? You know, we heard you got bit by a snake. Can you teach us how you treated that? We heard you don't use toothpaste. Can you show us how to make your tooth powder? You know, we heard that you raise chickens. Can you show us how to raise, so we just kept building and building and building. And finally, well, now, yeah, it's a business. We have, the last I checked, it was like 500,000 people in the database. I think it's a lot more because we have been exploding in growth just in the last months.
So to go in with food and growing that, I mean, we've already saw, the drought all over the place, and we just explained that. How is that going to affect food in general, whether you're growing your own food or you're even buying food at the supermarket, regardless?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, I'm here in Colorado right now. I'm in the process of packing up and selling a house I have here. And when I landed here on the plane, the first thing I noticed is smoke everywhere. And I've been a little bit like itchy eyes and congestion due to the smoke, which means Montana and Wyoming and all those wheat crops are not coming in this year. Idaho is not going to be producing any potatoes. California is not going to be producing its produce. In fact, most of the US production is down. And as you'd mentioned, in China, there's been severe flooding. Most of their production is down. Brazil had some really freak freezes, and globally, production is down. And the United Nations is not prone to like clickbait or scary headlines, but the United Nations has recently issued a warning that a global famine of biblical proportions is coming because of all these problems with crop failures everywhere. And some of it's due to the COVID restrictions and lockdowns and all the crazy stuff going on with the climate. Now, a backyard producer, interestingly enough, there's been a lot of studies that have shown we are way more efficient. We use like 80% less water than commercial producers. We use like 95% or 100% less fuel because it's right in your backyard. There's no shipping, no packaging, like that, right? We don't add toxicity to the ecosystem, or at least none of the people in my community do, because we're all growing organically. So backyard food production it's way more efficient. We actually produce way more per square foot than commercial agriculture does. So, and also nutritionally, the nutritional density of your own homegrown food is going to be anywhere from 10 times to 100 times greater than what you can buy anywhere, grocery store, farmer's market, or anything.
Is that because of chemicals being put on this, pesticides in general?
Yeah, it's that. And it's also that those big agricultural farms, they've been farming them for decades and decades, and they only focus on 3 nutrients. They only focus on nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But your body needs like 64 elements. And some of them are really trace elements, like selenium or copper or whatever. But a full nutrient-rich, dense soil has all of that in it, and the food it produces has all of that in it. And when you eat it, you're so much more healthier. But those crops that they've been growing for decades, that's all been completely devoid of nutrients. I mean, there's charts that will show you in the last 100 years, there's almost no nutrient density. In fact, so I'm 58, born in 63. When my mom gave me a carrot as like a 3 or a 4-year-old, 1 carrot, I have to give my kids 11 carrots to get the same nutritional content.
Jeez.
So it has plummeted. So we talk about, disease and obesity. It's malnutrition.
Is it a lot though that, we live in a society where people can't sit still for 10 seconds. There has to be instant gratification. You go, I'm hungry, I'm getting out of school. I'm hungry, I'm getting out of work. Let's go to McDonald's, let's go to Wendy's, Burger King, Subway, wherever it may be, and get that quick, fast food, which is completely garbage. I mean, I've watched documentary on documentary of the crap that's in
Yeah,
these kind of foods. I mean, it's such a disaster. And obviously that's building on the obesity epidemic in general. And also the sugars in this product. I mean, you talked a little bit about the school lunch program at the beginning of the interview. And these kids, what they eat for lunch at school is a disaster. I mean,
absolutely.
even if they give them yogurt, it's like pounded with sugar, the high fructose corn syrup galore. I mean, it's really a disaster. So, it is crazy that people don't really look at what they eat. But I've heard this, and I want you to, because I believe you don't agree with this either, is that people say it's too expensive to grow my own food. It's too much of a hassle. It's too expensive for me to even go in the supermarket if I have to do that and buy organic. Can you debunk that?
Absolutely. So first of all, yeah, if you go to a farmer's market, you can buy crates of tomatoes and can them and have your own delicious, nutritious tomato sauce. And it is pennies on the dollar compared to the grocery store. And the amount of nutrition is way higher. You can do the same thing. When I was in Texas, actually, whenever I've lived anywhere, I would always go to a local farmer and buy half a beef or buy half a pig or raise my own chickens and put them in the freezer. So I've got my own meat supply. Is it a little bit of work? Yeah, it is. But let me tell you a couple of things. One is I can give you an interview with Dave Asprey, who is the founder of Bulletproof Coffee, super famous guy, really into longevity. He has a life ambition of living to 180 years old, studies longevity. And he is into like the bioscience and nootropics and all the latest high-tech this and blood analysis and DNA analysis. And you know what? He grows his own food because every centenarian that's ever been interviewed grew their own food for most of their own life. It's a natural human activity that you're meant to do. It's what your body is designed to do. You need to get outside and the gentle
Yeah.
movements, the sunlight. The process of growing food is actually more health beneficial than eating the deeply nutritious food. So, it's a choice. Yeah, if you want to eat the McDonald's and whatever, that's great. You're gonna die early. Like that's just the bottom line. It's the truth. In fact, a lot of people are talking about Sally Fallon, bless her. She comes up with this saying. She says, "This is a time of the natural selection of the wise." Those who don't get it
Yeah.
are they're going to die off. That is just what's going to happen. I hate to be so harsh about it, but
Right.
that is the truth. And the real thing is, so I do one of the reasons I was interviewing Dave, I'm
Sure.
trying to chase this piece of sunlight around here. Let me try this. But one of the reasons I was interviewing Dave Asprey is I've done a whole series of interviews with like really high power executives, like guys that are managing, divisions with several thousand people,
Sure.
or companies with budgets of, 20, 30, $50 million a year. And they're growing their own food. And these people could afford anything. They could afford anything that they wanted, but they're growing their own food and they're spending anywhere from a half an hour to an hour a day in their backyard and probably producing about a quarter to half of what they need to eat. And they're doing it for multiple reasons. One, these are extremely high performance people. They cannot waste time, right? Like, the CEO of a big company. So even when they have downtime, they want it to be productive.
Yes.
Now, out working with chickens or gardens or rabbits or whatever you got going on, you're hugely productive. Electronics and water and dirt don't mix, so they don't have their phones or their electronics out there. And for them, it's an opportunity to be producing something that's incredibly meaningful for them, working on their health, doing something that's incredibly health beneficial. It's time out in a very, right-brained, nature-connected space that's rejuvenating, And they say it's the best time of their day. Like
Yeah.
that's the best time of their
I
day.
agree with
So
that because I go out there and I do have the headphones on over my ears and I put on a good podcast for an hour or 2 hours and I just do a lot of gardening. You know, we have fruit trees and a lot of avocado trees here too. And you know, that's my favorite part of the day is to go out there and work in the yard. And whether it's weeding, whether it's working on the trees and the vegetables and stuff that we do grow, that's my time for myself and I enjoy it. So I
yeah, me
agree.
too. I've got an online business like almost everybody now, right? Whether you work from home or not. And I love, you can't sit in front of this screen all the time.
Oh
So I
God.
love it that like every hour I get up and I just run outside and maybe I'll just do 5 minutes of pulling some grass or
Yeah.
go toss the chicken some mealy worms or check on the rabbit, run back in. But it's like a little break and I'm getting a little movement, I'm getting outside, I'm doing something useful, but it totally breaks up that screen time. And absolutely, man, I love the weekends where I'm doing building projects or totally renovating the garden bed or
Right.
upgrading the chicken coop. And it's just, I mean, working with your hands is something I think we all really miss, especially in this mental online virtual world that where more and more of us are getting enmeshed in.
What is the easiest, kind of type of food that they can grow regardless of what part of the country it is?
Yeah, I would say regardless of where you live, and by the way, the Grow Network is actually a global organization. We have people from all over the world.
Sure.
And regardless of where you live, there's somebody in there in our forums that can answer your questions for your bioregion.
Mm.
But I recommend everybody start with a flock of chickens. And I recommend 6 hens. And you want 6 because they're flocking animals. One hen, it's very cruel to have one hen. They want to have friends. They kind of depend on each other to always be alert and looking around. And so you want 6, and you don't really need much more than that. One hen will lay about 250 eggs in a year, and
Wow.
6 hens will give you about 1,500 eggs. So that's like 3 egg omelets every day for breakfast, plus 33 dozen eggs to give away to friends and family. And so like right now, yeah, in some places in the South, it's great to start gardening right now.
Mm.
But anywhere you can start building that chicken coop, go out on Craigslist. I recommend buying some laying hens that are already laying. So they're about 5 or 6 months old. Once you build the chicken coop and you get them in, it'll take them a few days to a week to get settled in. They'll start laying. You'll have an egg factory in your backyard in about 2 weeks. And those eggs, those 1,500 eggs a year are about 94,000 calories, which most people are like, calories, it's an evil word. I'm telling you, the calorie is going to be the new currency. We are in the middle of a dollar collapse, and food will be a currency. It will be a medium of exchange. Growing your own food will be like printing your own money. But I really recommend starting with chickens. And I've had people who say, well, I'm in an apartment or condominium. Quail. You can get little quail eggs. You're not going to get the same production, but you'll still get something and it'll be good.
There's a lot of, you talked about it earlier, Marjorie, is that, you would eat 1 carrot as a child, and now it would take 11 carrots to get that same nutrients. We hear a lot about minerals that we need in our, body. And as we get older, we may need these minerals, vitamins in general, more so than, younger people. My question is they tell you to go to the Walgreens or the CVS and buy a multivitamin. And I've heard very mixed reviews on if those are even worth anything, or they're just kind of a piece of junk in plain English. What is your take on that? What kind of research have they done on that?
If you're working with a skilled nutritionist, who does, like blood work and looks specifically at your case, and then they're very careful about how they select those nutrients. Supplements can be a very, very useful tool for aiding and healing. But in general, most of that supplement industry, as far as I'm concerned, it's just junk. And people are fooling themselves. Even your best nutritionist who does offer you some supplements is going to tell you that growing your own food or buying, farmers market food is really the solution. Your body is expecting whole foods. One way that's in the book that I mentioned, it's in the chapter about how to get nutrition fast, is there's a technique called an herbal infusion, where you take about a cup of, and there's only about 6 or 7 herbs that this really works with, but we'll use nettles, for example.
Mhm.
They're deeply, deeply, deeply nutritious, and you can make equivalently like a thick iced tea out of it. And I drink one of these infusions almost every day, and it's just like an incredible natural multivitamin. It comes from plants. You can see it. Your body knows what to do with it. It's not like some synthesized chemical from a lab. Just a really inexpensive and highly effective way to get a lot of nutrition fast.
Well, he end
Yeah.
with a little bit of hope. I don't know if there is any.
Absolutely, no, there's a lot of hope. I really am very, very hopeful for the future. And I know we're going to go through a very difficult period.
Mhm.
I want to reiterate again, I agree with the UN. We are headed into a famine of biblical proportions, and we're going to have difficult times, right? Even the World Economic Forum says 2020 is just going to look like a minor inconvenience compared to what's coming. But there is incredibly good news. And that is, you can grow about half of the food that you need to eat in the size of about 3 parking spots. It will produce incredibly nutritious food that will heal you both on the physical level, the mental level, and then you will start to have a spiritual awakening that you can't even imagine right now. It is the path. And I know mental illness is at a high, and it's because people fundamentally know that the system's broken and it's breaking down, and things that we used to trust and rely on, we're finding out were lies or corrupt or whatever, malfunctioning. The saving grace in all of this is you can still source everything you need directly from the earth. You do not need a governmental, industrial, medical think tank complex to feed you and provide you with medicine. You can do it directly from the earth. And it really doesn't take that long to learn it. That's part of what the Grow Network is all about, is figuring out how to teach people to do this really, really quickly. And it'll be the best thing that you've ever done in your life. I promise you, once you get started, it's addictive, it's fun, it's healing. And where I recommend people start is we created a little video called Grow Half, which shows you in a really empowering video that really a simple 3-part system on how to grow half of your own food, like I said, in a backyard size space. And it's over at www.growhalf.com. Snagged that URL. But growhalf.com. And it's a free video, a lot of resources. We'll introduce you to the Grow Network. We'll introduce you to the forums. Anybody can reach me in the forums at any time. My tag is at Marjory Wildcraft. I respond almost to all the comments I get. So yeah, would love to hear from you. And yeah, I'm definitely up for doing some more interviews. This is the most critical issue on the planet right now, and we're here to serve. That's what we're here to do.
We'll have quite a few more questions about medical stuff and also supermarkets issues. So we definitely got to do this again. I really appreciate the insight. I'm looking forward to the next interview, Marjory. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Rob.